We live in a world that tells us to wait until you feel ready, wait until you have more confidence, wait until the fear disappears. But here's the truth. Waiting is a lie that keeps us comfortable, hidden, and stuck. Growth doesn't happen in the shadows of hesitation. Transformation isn't found in the quiet corners of comfort. It happens when we dare to show up, even when our hands are trembling, even when our voices crack, even when we don't have it all figured out. You don't need to be fearless to move forward. You need to be willing to try, willing to stumble, willing to be seen trying. Because courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about feeling the fear, the uncertainty, the resistance, and choosing to take one step anyway. That's where your power lies. Taking action day by day isn't about giant leaps. It's about the tiny, brave, often invisible choices we make in the quiet moments. It's waking up and saying, I don't know what this day will bring, but I will not hide from it. It's choosing send the email, have the conversation, start the project, ask for help, set the boundary. It's about refusing to let perfectionism be the boss of you. Because perfectionism will try to convince you that if it's not epic, it's not worth doing. But the truth is, done is always better than perfect. Let me be clear, forcing yourself to take action doesn't metering your emotions. It doesn't mean silencing your pain or bypassing your struggles. It means honoring your discomfort and still showing up. It means whispering to yourself, I desire live fully, even when your inner critic screams otherwise. Every step forward is a rebellion against the idea that you're not enough. Confidence doesn't arrive like lightning. It doesn't strike out of the blue and suddenly electrify you into motion. It is not a magical feeling you wake up with one morning. No, confidence is something far more human, something raw, something earned. It is built in the moments you choose to act despite the quiver in your voice, despite the knot in your stomach, despite the loud and persuasive voice of self-doubt that tries to convince you to stay small, stay safe, stay silent. Confidence is the result of courage. It is the quiet reward that comes only after you've already taken the risk. You don't wait for it. You build it. You craft it. You forget and fire. When you force yourself to take action, you're not being fake. You're not pretending to be something you're not. You're simply refusing to let fear make all your decisions. You're not waiting for your nerves to settle or your anxiety to fade. You're not waiting for the perfect plan, the perfect timing, or the perfect version of yourself to show up. You are taking ownership of your story, stepping forward, shaky and unsure, and that is where confidence begins. Confidence is not the starting line. It's the echo of 1,000 moments where you showed up anyway. Let's be honest, the moments where we most need confidence are often the ones where we feel it the least. Speaking up in a meeting, setting a boundary with someone you care about, starting something new, something uncertain, pursuing a dream that no one else can quite see yet. In these moments, fear feels bigger than truth. Doubt feels louder than hope. That's the exact moment you must choose action over paralysis, because something powerful happens when proof to yourself that you can act even when you don't feel ready. You begin to rewrite the story you've been telling yourself about who you are. You start small. Maybe it's a phone call you've been avoiding. Maybe it's finally sharing your work or your voice or your feelings. Maybe it's standing tall when everything inside you wants to shrink. These may seem like small acts, but they're mighty. Every time you force yourself to take that step, your brain starts learning, I can do hard things. I can face the discomfort. I can survive vulnerability. And then something shifts. That belief becomes a seed. And if you keep watering it with action, it begins to grow into real, grounded confidence. Not the loud, showy kind, but the deeply rooted kind that says, I belong here. The world will try to sell you shortcuts to confidence. Courses, hacks, tricks. But the truth is, there's no substitute for lived experience. Real confidence is not an accessory you can buy. It's a muscle you develop. And like any muscle, it requires resistance. It requires practice. It requires showing up day after day and doing the uncomfortable thing, the brave thing, the thing you were scared to do yesterday. That's how you earn the kind of self-trust that no one can take away from you. There's something sacred about those first steps you take when no one is watching. The times you push yourself to the thing simply because it matters to you. That internal fire, that grit, is more powerful than external validation. It's not about proving anything to anyone else. It's about proving to yourself that you are capable of showing up for your life, that you can be the kind of person who doesn't back down just because the path is steep or the outcome is uncertain or your hands won't stop shaking. It's easy to assume that confident people were just born that way, but that's a myth. Confidence is not genetic. It's developed. And the people you admire for their courage, their strength, their presence, they weren't fearless. They acted in spite of the fear. They failed and tried again. They were rejected, misunderstood, criticized, and they kept going because they knew that confidence wasn't the goal. Growth was. Integrity was. Becoming more of who they truly are was. Every act of courage you take adds another layer to your foundation. You start to recognize your own resilience. You learn to trust your voice. You learn to carry your vulnerability with pride instead of shame. You learn that discomfort is not the enemy. It's the evidence that you're expanding, that you're outgrowing the limitations you once accepted as truth. You realize that the only way to become confident is to first become willing, to be seen, to be imperfect, to be a beginner. And there's something beautiful about being a beginner, something raw and real. Because beginners are honest, beginners humble, beginners are brave enough to try without guarantees. And that's where all confidence is born, in the trying, in the refusal to wait for certainty before taking the leap, in the willingness to look fear in the eye and say, you don't decide how this story ends. That's the shift. That's the power. That's the point where self-belief begins to stir inside you, not as a sudden explosion, but as a steady fire that gets stronger every time you take one more step forward when it would have been easier to stay where you are. You don't have to fake it. You don't have to force yourself to feel confident. You just have to force self to take action again and again, especially when it's hard, especially when it's scary, because that's what makes you stronger. That's what rewrites the voice in your head from, I can't too. I did. And eventually you'll look back at all the moments that you couldn't do it and realize you did it anyway. We often believe the road greatness is paved with big, dramatic moves, the bold decisions, the public wins, the massive transformations. But the truth is, lasting change doesn't erupt like a thunderstorm. It builds like the sunrise, slow, quiet, and powerful. The things that truly shift our lives start small. So small, in fact, that they often go unnoticed. They live in the quiet discipline of daily decisions. They are born in the unseen moments where you choose to keep going, to keep showing up, to keep doing what you said you would do, even when no one is watching. These small steps, when repeated, lead to most profound and lasting changes in your life. There is something deeply empowering about choosing consistency over intensity. Anyone can sprint once. Anyone can be fired up for a moment. But those who truly grow, those who transform themselves from the inside out, are the ones who learn how to take small steps again and again, especially when motivation has run dry. They'll learn that you don't need to feel inspired to act. You just need to remember that every small effort is adding up, like drops of water that eventually carve canyons, like bricks that slowly build cathedrals. Your daily choices are constructing something greater than you can yet see. The truth is, most of life happens in the ordinary. It happens in the repetition, in the getting up when you're tired, in choosing to try again after a bad day, in the mundane tasks that don't seem to matter, but they do. They matter more than you know because they are the evidence of your commitment. They are the proof that you are investing in your future self. And over time, those small steps create a kind of momentum that becomes almost unstoppable. It's tempting to chase instant gratification, to crave fast results, to expect quick fixes. We live in a culture that glorifies speed and dramatics. But what's real, what's meaningful, is built with patience, with grit, with intentional effort. The most successful, fulfilled people are not the ones who made one huge leap and landed in greatness. They are the ones who took thousands of small, often invisible steps, refusing to quit. They are the ones who chose to force themselves into action, even when it was boring, even when it was hard, even when it didn't look like it was working. There is a kind of magic in the process you don't see right away. On day 1, there is no transformation. On day 5, things may still feel the same. But by day 30, something inside you shifts. And by day 90, your perspective has changed. Your discipline has strengthened. Your self-respect has grown because you kept going. Because you didn't let the absence of immediate results trick you into stopping. Because you understood that this is a long game and the power is in your persistence. It's not about being extraordinary every day. It's about being committed, being grounded, being willing to do what needs to be done, even when it's inconvenient, even when you're tired, even when your progress feels invisible. Because what you're doing isn't just building a habit, it's building character. You are becoming someone who honors their word, someone who doesn't abandon themselves, someone who refuses to negotiate with procrastination, self-doubt, or laziness. And that someone is who you were always meant to be. When you force self to take small actions daily, you start to reclaim your power from the lies that tell you it's not worth it. You prove to yourself that you are capable of showing up, that your effort is valid even when no one claps for it. That discipline isn't punishment. It's a form of self-love. It's the quiet voice that says, you deserve more, so let's keep going. You are not meant to live in extremes, either all in or completely checked out. You are meant to find strength in the middle, in the repetition, in the commitment to growth that isn't glow, it is deeply meaningful. When you train yourself to take small, steady action, you stop relying on bursts of energy or fleeting motivation. Instead, you develop something far more sustainable endurance. You become emotionally durable. You become unshakable, not because you never fall, but because you always get back up. And with each small step, something else happens. Your brain starts to rewire. It starts to believe in you because it sees evidence, not potential, not good intentions, but action. And action is what creates identity. You no longer just want to be a writer, an athlete, an entrepreneur. You area one because you show up like one. You no longer just wish for confidence. You become confident because you prove to yourself daily that you can do the hard things. The process is never linear. You will take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You will have days where the progress is invisible, days where you feel like giving up, days where you question why you're even trying. But if you hold the line, if you keep taking 1 step, then another, you will look up one day and realize you've come miles from where you started. Not because of one grand moment of change, but because of the thousands of quiet choices that added up. You will begin to trust yourself more. You will stop breaking promises to yourself. You will stop waiting for a miracle and start becoming the miracle. And all of it will trace back to those steps you took when it was hard, when it felt pointless, when it would have been easier to do nothing at all. Discomfort is not a sign you're doing things wrong. It's a sign you're doing something real. Too often, we are taught to avoid discomfort, to interpret it as danger, to see it as something to escape. We're conditioned to seek ease, to choose the safe route, to build a life inside confines of what feels familiar. But the truth is, nothing transformative, nothing deeply rewarding has ever been born inside comfort zones. Growth begins the moment you step into discomfort and choose to stay there long enough to let it change you. Discomfort is a teacher. It shows up not to hurt you, but to refine. It pushes you beyond the limits you've placed around yourself. Every time you feel that burning stretch inside your chest, every time your stomach turns the edge of risk, every time your heart races in the presence of vulnerability, that's the place where your old self ends and the new self begins. And that place isn't polished or pretty. It's real. It's messy. But it's where all the magic happens. You don't become stronger by staying safe. You don't become braver by staying quiet. You don't become more resilient by avoiding the edge. You become those things by doing the uncomfortable things you once thought you couldn't handle. You become them by standing in the heat of challenge and realizing it doesn't destroy you. It reveals you. It introduces you to the strength you forgot you had. When you force yourself to step in discomfort, when you willingly enter the zone of fear, doubt, and uncertainty, you interrupt the narrative that says you're only okay when things are easy. You prove to yourself that you can hold space for tension without collapsing under it, that you can feel scared and still move forward, that you can be unsure and still take action. This is where your emotional muscles are built, not in the moments when everything flows, but in the moments when you want to quit, when your mind screams, retreat. And you choose to line and instead think of the people who inspire you the most, the ones who are bold, grounded, powerful. They didn't become that way because life handed them everything on a silver platter. They became that way because they walked the fire again and again and allowed it to transform again. They didn't run from the discomfort of failure, rejection, or fear. They learned from it. They stayed with it long enough to let building grit, perspective, and empathy. Discomfort isn't a punishment. It's an invitation. It's your life saying, there's more for you, but you'll have to stretch to reach it. When you accept that invitation, when you stop trying to numb, avoid, or escape what's hard, something inside you begins to awaken. You begin to expand. You begin to realize that the real danger isn't discomfort. It's stagnation. It's staying stuck in a version of yourself that no longer fits simply because it feels safer than growth. Growth will always cost you something. It will cost you your comfort. It will cost you your excuses. It will cost you the stories you've clung to about why you can't, why you're not ready, why you don't deserve it. And it will be comfortable. But that discomfort is the birthplace of transformation. It's the necessary fire that burns away when no longer serves you so you can rise in who you're meant to be. You don't have to like discomfort. You just have to learn how to sit with it, to breathe through it, to remind yourself it's temporary. because it always is. The fear, the pain, the uncertainty, they pass. But the version of you that's shaped in that process, that remains. That stays with you. That becomes your new normal. And then the cycle begins again. Another stretch, another challenge, another opportunity to step forward when everything in you wants to step back. There's a moment right before we do something brave where everything in our body says no, where we start to shrink, where we feel exposed, unsure, not enough. That is the threshold. That is the sacred space where old patterns and new ones are born. And the only way through it is to act, to move, to force yourself to take that next step, even if it's small, even if it's shaky, because action breaks the grip of fear. Action reclaims your power. You don't need to be unafraid to be brave. You just need to stop letting discomfort be the barrier between you and your growth. Every time you stretch beyond what feels easy, you're telling your nervous system, I can handle more. You're retraining your mind to see challenge as a catalyst, not a threat. You're building emotional resilience. That allows you to show up in your life fully, messily, unapologetically. The discomfort will come. That's guaranteed. The question is what you'll do with it. Will you run? Will you retreat into old patterns and habits, old beliefs? Or will you lean into the fire, trusting that the you on the other side is stronger, wiser, and more alive? That version of you is waiting, not in the comfort, not in the safety, but in the stretch, in the rise, in the choice to keep going when everything inside says stop. Growth asks for your courage. It asks for your patience. It asks for your willingness to sit in discomfort long enough to let it teach you something new about yourself. And every time you make that choice, every time you step into that fire with head held high and your heart still open, you become more of who you were always meant to be. There is a myth we've been sold that action must come from motivation. That in order to begin anything worthwhile, we first need to feel inspired, lit up, excited, ready. But if you wait for that perfect feeling, if you sit around waiting for the spark to magically appear, you'll spend your life watching opportunities pass you by. Because the truth is, motivation is fleeting. It is unreliable. It comes and goes like the weather. You cannot build a life, a career, a dream, or a better version of yourself by depending on something so inconsistent. If you want real change, you can't wait until you feel like it. You have to act regardless of your mood. You have to build the discipline to show up, not just when it's easy, but when it's boring, when it's exhausting, when it's hard, when it's the last thing you want to do. Your brain is wired to protect you, not to push you. It will always nudge you toward comfort, toward ease, toward familiarity. So, of course, you don't feel like taking action. Of course, the bed feels better than the gym. Of course, scrolling feels safer than starting. Of course, silence feels easier than speaking up. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you human. But being human also means you have the power to override those urges. You have the capacity to choose something different. You can interrupt the pattern. You can choose discipline over desire. And the moment you do, you start shifting the narrative inside your own mind. When you force yourself to act before you feel like it, something powerful begins to happen. Your brain starts to learn that you are not controlled by impulse, that you can be trusted, that you can do what's hard even when it doesn't feel good in the moment. And the more you practice this, the easier it becomes because you stop waiting for the feeling and you start generating it through movement. Motivation doesn't precede action. Action E creates motivation. You take the step first, no matter how small, and the momentum follows. Every time you act when you didn't feel like it, you plant a seed of self-respect. You train your mind to understand that your choices are not dependent on how the day is going or how you happen to feel. This is how consistency is built. Not on fire, not on hype, but on the grit, on the quiet, steady decision to keep showing up. Anyone can be motivated once in a while. Anyone can make a burst of effort when everything aligns. But those who truly change their lives are ones that act without the feeling. They move forward without the hype. They take the uncomfortable steps, one after another, even on the days when their mind is flooded with doubt and resistance. The idea of waiting until you feel like it is seductive. It gives you an easy way out. It tells you that tomorrow will be different, that eventually the right wave of motivation will crash in and carry you to where you want to go. But that wave rarely arrives. And if it does, it doesn't last. So what do you do on the days it doesn't show up? You act anyway. You drag yourself to the task. You break it into the smallest possible pieces if you have to. You set the timer. You begin because beginning is everything. The moment you start, the resistance loses some of its power. The fog begins to lift. And even if the task doesn't get easier, the year gets stronger. You remember that you don't need to wait for inspiration to move. You can move creative it through action. This mindset shift is essential. It means you stop relying on external conditions to move you. You stop being a passenger in your own life. You take the wheel, you decide what matters, and then you align your actions with that decision, regardless of whether you're in the mood or not. Because if you only act when it feels good, we'll live a life shaped by your lowest moments, not your highest intentions. But when you act based on commitment, not convenience, you begin to build something real, something lasting. It's not glamorous. It's not always fun. There are no fireworks, no applause, just you and the task in front of you. Just you and the decision to keep going and the steady beat of your own determination. But that's where your power lives. That's where your future is shaped. Not in the bursts of inspiration, but in the daily grind, in the uncomfortable, repetitive actions that most people avoid, in the discipline to keep showing up, keep building, keep believing, especially when you don't feel like it. There will be days when you're tired, when you doubt is loud, when you question everything. On those days, discipline is your anchor. It's the voice that says, I don't have to want, I just have to do it. And that voice is more powerful than any fleeting emotion because emotions are temporary, but habits are permanent. Feelings come and go, but results are built through action. Every single day you act without motivation, you're building a habit that will carry you through the hardest seasons of your life. You begin to learn that your feelings are facts, that you don't have to obey every emotion that rises inside you, that you can choose a different story, one where you are not led by impulse, but by intention, one where your identity is not shaped by what you felt like doing, but by what you actually did, one where success isn't an accident. It's the natural outcome of showing up over and over again, even when the feeling didn't follow. Every dream, every breakthrough, every transformation you long for is not waiting in the distance. It's quietly being shaped by the choices you make each day. There's a tendency to imagine that the fear is this massive moment that suddenly arrives that changes some dramatic turning point with fireworks and applause. But the truth is, your future isn't some distant event. It's happening now. It's happening in your morning routine, in how you speak to yourself, in what you say yes to, in what you allow. In whether you choose discipline or distraction, your future is not a place you stumble into. It's something you build moment by moment with the bricks of your daily behavior. It's easy to believe that big results come from big actions, but that's not the full story. Big results are built by small decisions compounded over time. The person who becomes strong and transferred overnight, they showed up day after day when it was inconvenient, when no one was watching, when the scale didn't move and the energy wasn't there. The person who becomes successful in there didn't suddenly wake at the top. They carved out time to learn, to practice, to fail, and try again, even when it felt like progress was invisible. These aren't isolated acts of motivation. They are consistent commitments to a higher standard. Every choice you make is casting a vote for the kind of person you want to become. When you choose to procrastinate, when you choose to numb, when you choose the easy way out, you're not just making a small decision. You're reinforcing a habit, a belief, a story. And when you choose to show up, when you choose to act with intention, when you do the hard thing, even when no one will know about it, you're reinforcing a different kind of story. One where you are becoming someone who leads their life rather than reacts to it. One where you are no longer waiting for permission, waiting for motivation, or waiting for the perfect moment. The life you want is not just found in the big wins. It's built in the consistency of your values aligning with your behavior. When your choices reflect what you truly want, even when they are hard, even when they are inconvenient, you are creating a life of integrity. And integrity isn't about perfection. It's about being honest with yourself. It's about showing up for what matters, even when no one is keeping score. It's subject to think that some future version of yourself will be more disciplined, more energized, more focused. We love to imagine that tomorrow will be better, that next week will feel different, that next month will bring the magic shift. But the truth is, tomorrow is shaped by what you do today. Waiting for the future to save you is a lie that keeps you stuck. There is no better version of you coming rescue the version of you who won't take action. You become that version by doing the work today, by making the choices that reflect where you want to go, not where you've been. Your routines, your mindset, your energy, your relationships, your goals, all of them are impacted by the things you do repeatedly. What you tolerate becomes your normal. What you prioritize becomes your identity. This isn't about being perfect or robotic. It's about being aware. Are your current choices building a future you want to live in? Or are they keeping you tethered to the past you say you want to escape? Most people won't notice the difference between the person who acts and the person who waits. At least not right away. But 6 months from now, 1 year from now, 5 years, the difference is massive. The person who took small steps each day is living a completely different life than the one who kept saying someday. The difference is in luck. It's not intelligence. It's the quiet, daily decision to move forward instead of standing still. You don't need to overhaul your life in one day. You just need to start aligning your actions with your vision. You need to take the small, often invisible steps that over time grow into something powerful. A 5-minute decision repeated every day is more powerful than a 5-hour decision made once a year. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You don't fall to the level of your systems, your habits, your structure. So if you want to predict your future, look at your daily routine. If you want to see where you're headed, study your choices. Because life doesn't respond to what we say we want. It responds to what we actually do. Every day you are either building momentum, giving it away. You are either feeding your dreams or feeding your distractions. There is no neutral. Your time, your energy, your decisions, they're all flowing somewhere. The question is, are they flowing toward the person you say you want to be? You don't need more time. You don't need a miracle. You don't need to wait for a clean slate. You need to take the responsibility of your future into your own hands by honoring the power of today. Because today, as ordinary as it may feel, holds all the leverage. Today is when your future is written. Not bold, dramatic strokes, but in the small, quiet actions that reflect your highest self. You were not born to live a life ruled by fear, hesitation, or self-doubt. You were not placed on this earth to shrink, to stay small, or to play safe for the comfort of others or the convenience of your own uncertainty. There is something inside of you, something bold, something brilliant, something unfinished. That is aching to come alive. And every single time you force yourself to take action, to move toward your purpose, to speak your truth, to show up fully, you honor that part of you. You remind yourself that your life is not to be defined by your fears, but by your effort, your courage, and your willingness to become more than what the world expects of you. There is a quiet war happening inside, so haptic, the war between their potential and their fear, between the life they dream about and the life they settle for. And most people choose fear, not because they are weak, but because fear is familiar. Fear is comfortable. Fear is predictable. It tells you, stay here where it's safe. Don't risk failure. Don't risk rejection. Don't dare to believe could have more. But the truth is, safety is a lie when it keeps you stuck. Comfort becomes a cage when it steals your growth, and your potential becomes a burden when in those used. The only way to break free from that is to act, to force yourself again and again, to step beyond what feels safe and toward what feels right. You do not need anyone else to approve of your dream. You do not need permission to rise. You need only your own decision, the decision to stop living in response to fear and to start living in alignment with what you know you're capable of. That shift doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens in thousands of small moments where you choose effort over ease, where you choose truth over silence, where you choose growth over comfort. You deserve a life that reflects your intention, not your insecurity. You deserve to walk in rooms without shrinking, to speak without apologizing, to wake up and feel proud of how you're living, not just for what others can see, but for who you know to be true about yourself. And that life isn't given. It's built. It's shaped by the hours no one sees, the daily choices that seem insignificant, the inner battles where you choose discipline over doubt, the ordinary moments where you decide to be the kind of person who shows up, even when it's uncomfortable. Every time you force yourself to act, not with aggression, but with grounded intention, you're reclaiming your power from the stories that tried to define you. Maybe someone told you that you were too or not enough. Maybe you were raised in an environment where your dreams were dismissed, where vulnerability was punished, where playing small was the only way to stay safe. But just because messages shaped you doesn't mean they get to define you. You get to rewrite the narrative. You get to be author of your own future. You don't have to be the lewdest person in the room to be powerful. You don't have to have all the answers to be worthy. You don't have to have a perfect plan to begin. You just have to start. You just have to act in alignment with who are becoming rather than who you've been told to be. You don't need to feel confident to begin. You just need to begin, and confidence will catch up, because confidence is not something that's within to you. It's something you earn through action, through evidence, through the consistent, quiet work of showing up again and again and again. You were not meant to live on autopilot. You were meant to live with intention, with heart, with grit. And that requires action, not perfect action, not grand gestures, but the kind of action that says, I refuse to let fear dictate the boundaries of my life, the kind of action that is rooted in self-respect, in a deep understanding that your life is worth the effort, that your goals are not foolish, that your voice is not a burden, that your presence, your dreams, they matter and they deserve to be pursued, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Forcing yourself to take action doesn't ignoring your pain or pushing through without compassion. It means loving yourself enough to not let pain become your excuse. It means honoring your emotions while still honoring your growth. It means knowing that healing and progress can coexist, that fear and movement can live in the same breath, that you can be uncertain and still move forward. That's where real strength is built, not in the absence of struggle, but in the decision to keep going anyway. You don't rise by accident. You rise by intention, by taking action that honors who you are and who you want to become, by refusing to abandon yourself, even when the world tells you to play small, by remembering every single day that your life is not a rehearsal. This is it. This is the one shot you get to write a story that feels real, that feels full, that reflects your values, not your fears. You owe it to yourself to live that way. Not later, not someday, but now, through daily, intentional action that aligns with your vision and refuses to settle for anything less.